What happens when the one you love most turns their back, casting you into the icy darkness of a Chicago winter night? Clara Bennett, a pregnant woman clinging to dreams of everlasting love, is abandoned by her husband, Julian Carter, in a biting snowstorm, unaware that she harbors the secret of the Hawthorne family's billion-dollar fortune. Can pain forge a stronger soul? Can a single mother rise to claim justice? This is Clara's story, a journey from the ashes of betrayal to the unquenchable flame of resilience. Alright, before you settle in, take a sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely vibing with what I'm putting out here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. The window latch creaked under the biting wind of Logan Square. Each gust of icy air felt like needles piercing her skin. In the cramped, modest apartment, every piece of furniture seemed to press down on her shoulders. Clara Bennett clutched her thin sweater tighter, fighting to stifle the tremors that ran from her fingertips to her heels. At 6 months pregnant, her body was changing at breakneck speed, her belly growing heavier by the day, her steps more labored, her heart racing with unexplained bouts of panic. Each morning she dragged herself to the little coffee shop where she worked part-time, forcing on her habitual warm smile. But beneath the layer of rosy makeup, her eyes betrayed an unending fatigue. To most, Clara was simply the petite barista greeting customers with care. "Hot latte for you." Yet no one knew that behind that smile lay a soul in knots, trembling as the promises she once held slipped through her grasp. Julian Carter, her husband, whose name once set her heart pounding, had vowed they would build a radiant home together. He spoke of a sprawling suburban estate, of their child's nursery painted in pastels, of laughter echoing down grand hallways. Clara believed him. She believed with every fragile beat of her heart. Then came that bone-chilling winter's night. The sky was cloaked in relentless snowfall. Each flake drifted down like an invisible tear. Clara awoke in the dark to the jangle of keys. The door swung open, and in staggered Julian, reeking of alcohol and arrogance. The dim living room light carved harsh shadows across his face, rendering him cruel in its glow. He offered no greeting, no tender concern. He simply stepped forward, his voice as cold as the night air. "Do you realize you're nothing but a burden, Clara?" Her mind shattered. Her heart hammered wildly. Blood roared in her ears. Her legs threatened to buckle. Clutching her swollen belly, she stared at the life within, the tiny being formed from the love she had for Julian. But he looked upon her as an enemy. His eyes flickered with disgust, his twisted smile slicing through her chest like a blade. Without another word, he ripped the suitcase she'd neatly packed from its corner, hurling it across the room. It crashed onto the wooden floor with a hollow thud, bursts of clothing, beloved books, and a pair of tiny pale pink baby socks spilling out onto the cold boards. Clara stepped back, her heart constricting. She couldn't cry aloud. Instead, she sank to her knees amid the scattered belongings. Her child, the one Julian claimed he never wanted, was safe inside her womb. She bent down, hand trembling, to gather the tiny socks. Those scraps of fabric that had once rested lovingly in her palm now lay as symbols of a future shattered. She traced the frayed stitches, as though reading the dreams she had woven each night. Dreams of a home, of a family she believed would endure. The door slammed behind her. The latch clicked shut like a death knell. Outside, the snow continued to fall, and the pale moonlight cast 2 streams of tears across her cheeks. Clara lifted her head, lips quivering as she whispered hoarsely, "Julian." But only the wind answered. The window sat cold and silent. The stillness pressed in around her. She steeled herself to stand, though her body ached in every fiber and her heart threatened to break. Through the blanket of snow, her footprints pressed a path to the building's entrance, each step leaving a fragile mark on the fresh drifts, painting her pant legs white. Her agony was more than abandonment. It was the betrayal of the one who once vowed to cherish her. Clara pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the gentle flutter, the tiny heartbeat of the child she carried. That child knew nothing of cruelty. To him, the world was the night beyond the window, where a mother whimpered in a snowy storm yet refused to yield. In that moment, memories of their wedding flashed before her. Julian lifting her gown with tender care, promising to weather every storm by her side. She had cried tears of joy as he'd whispered, "You are my entire world." Now the air felt suffocating. Those words were barbs driving into her soul. She curled inward against the wind, but refused to fall. Clara murmured to herself, "We must move on. You still need your mother." A final tear slid down her cheek, melting into the boundless white at her feet. Turning her back on the building, Clara walked alone through the driving snow, confronting the chill and the solitude. She left the baby socks behind, where they lay as a cruel reminder of what was lost. And yet, in her heart, the spark of her child's eyes still glowed with hope. She was no longer the useless wife in Julian's eyes. She was the fierce guardian of this tiny life. And however cold the world may grow, she would keep her heart warm, carrying the soft drumbeat within her forward into a new beginning. Because when the world freezes over, it is love and courage that kindle the greatest strength. A gentle autumn breeze carried the scent of paper and a hint of coffee as Clara stepped through the weathered gate of the suburban home where she had been raised in her mother's simple embrace. Everything here felt lovingly unadorned, the willow branches bowing over the path, the sparrows chattering on the eaves, and the edge-worn wooden table where Clara and Margaret once shared their smallest dreams. Clara had never noticed that, beneath this peaceful facade, a legacy of glamour and power flowed quietly beneath the surface. Margaret Hawthorne, her mother, had chosen a solitary yet proud path. She relinquished every ounce of Hawthorne prestige and opulence to raise her daughter in a humble rhythm. That woman was more than a mother. She was a guiding lighthouse, teaching Clara that true value lay in the heart, not in business cards or bank balances. Each afternoon, her gaunt silhouette would stretch across the cement wall as she described the lavish soirees of New York, the billion-dollar deals, and then sigh. "My dear, there may be grandeur out there, but hearts are not always warm." Yet truth has its own way of revealing itself. When Clara turned 22, her mother, the last tier of the Hawthorne bloodline, quietly passed away, leaving behind a bedroom brimming with memories and a fragile will. The will disclosed that Margaret had established a trust to safeguard the family's immense fortune, shielding Clara from the limelight of high society. Theodore Hawthorne, her grandfather, the renowned real estate and tech magnate, had no inkling of Clara's existence, his only grandchild, swept away by the wind of Margaret's estrangement. That inheritance remained like a hidden jewel, locked in a mahogany box, awaiting the moment Clara would open it. Clara kept this secret fiercely. She never let anyone, friends, co-workers, not even Julian, glimpse the numbers buried beneath her painful memories. In the years after her mother's death, Clara threw herself into barista work at the corner cafe and attended evening classes at the community college. The harsh glare of fluorescent lights, the clatter of keyboards, the crisp scent of fresh textbooks. Each became witness to her longing for normalcy, to be loved for who she was, not for the medal of wealth. By day, she greeted loyal customers with a gentle smile. By night, she pored over textbooks in her modest room. Some nights, she collapsed from exhaustion, yet when she woke, her eyes still held unbreakable resolve. Inside her, two forces warred: fear of discovery and return to a glittering world, and the fervent wish to honor her mother's legacy, that Clara would shine only by the light of her own heart. Whenever the street lamp cast its thin beam across her window, Clara would wonder, "Do I have the strength to weather the coming storm of fame?" Then the fragile peace began to tremble. A letter arrived, sealed tight from her mother's attorney, regarding the disbursement of the Hawthorne Trust. Those words sliced through her like a knife. She gripped the letter in silence, her heart pounding fiercely. She recalled her mother's words. "When you're ready, when you feel the need, open Pandora's box. But be certain you won't be swept away by its glow." Now that moment had come, and Clara knew she could no longer hide. Alone in the dim room, she sat before the mahogany chest, her mother's sole gift, tracing the carved name C. Bennett with trembling fingertips. In her ear, her own heartbeat echoed, a reminder that after every storm, the sky grows brighter. Clara inhaled deeply, exhaling a plume of white into the air. Her eyes glistened not only with curiosity, but with fear. If she opened it, this small life she had painstakingly built, where she was loved for herself, might vanish forever. Yet maternal love, and a will, demanded that decisive moment. Clara eased the lid, the wooden latch creaking like ancient hinges, yielding a millennium of secrets. Inside lay legal documents and staggering sums of money, but most important, a letter from her mother. "My beloved daughter, I trust you are wise enough to use this fortune for noble ends. Help the world, but never forget yourself." A hot tear welled and fell, mingling with the scent of aged wood and ink. Clara felt her mother's presence more strongly than ever, as if Margaret's hands rested on her shoulders in encouragement. Now, Clara was neither the ordinary barista she had been, nor the pampered heiress she might have been. She stood between two worlds, one of dazzling wealth, the other of humble compassion. A final tear slid down her cheek, and Clara smiled, because for the first time, she knew exactly what she must do. Her hidden identity was no longer a burden, but a torch lighting her path ahead. And Clara Bennett, with her ever-steadfast heart, would step forward, carrying her mother's wish to restore true meaning to wealth, love, and shared generosity. The biting wind drove snowflakes through the crack in the door, pelting each drifting flake against Clara's thin coat. She shivered as she trudged along the icy street, her heart pounding as if it might burst from her chest. All around her was white snow, fragile white hope, the hollow white of utter loneliness. Clutching her small leather bag tight, its only contents a few changes of clothes and the last cash her mother left her, she held fast to the sole fragment left of her life. At last, Clara arrived at a shabby boarding house on a silent suburban Chicago street, its peeling walls bathed in the sickly pink glow of a flickering neon sign. She handed the rent money to the gaunt, indifferent proprietor, then dragged herself inside to her cramped room. The door slammed behind her, the bolt's sharp click sounding like a verdict. No turning back. The walls exposed crumbling brick and mortar. The floorboards groaned underfoot, and the thin, stained blanket on the bed offered scant comfort. The humming fluorescent light overhead illuminated Clara's tear-streaked face. She sank to the edge of the bed, shoulders trembling with desperate breaths. She picked up her phone, the cold screen smudged with fingerprints, and, fingers shaking, dialed Evelyn Marshall. Her heart hammered, longing to hear the warm voice of the one person she trusted. The phone vibrated a moment. Then Evelyn's calm greeting filled her ears. "Clara, it's Connie. Evelyn here." Just that single name, and every fragment of her shattered heart felt glued back together. No reproach, no extra questions, only Evelyn's gentle promise. "Tell me what you need. I'll be there right away." Clara's tears flowed freely, mingling with the ragged breaths of the winter night. Cradling the phone, she felt less alone. Outside, the snow continued to fall, each crystal drifting down in relentless waves. She hugged her pillow tighter, closed her eyes, and let the tremors subside. Though her body was worn to the bone, her mind had never felt sharper. She whispered to herself, "Hold on. Keep living. For the baby." Dawn's first gray light filtered through the clouds as the last stars faded behind the slate sky. A sharp knock at her door made Clara start. With heavy feet, she opened it to find Evelyn standing there, her silver hair loose around her shoulders, her tailored black suit pristine and untroubled by worry, her eyes sharp, yet kind. Evelyn guided Clara out to the waiting SUV, whose warm interior air enveloped them as they drove into the biting chill. The city streets slid past in silence, until a neon "Welcome to Downtown Chicago" sign flickered into view. Clara sat quietly, gazing at Evelyn's pale hair, seeking comfort in the passing streetlights. Evelyn spoke scarcely a word, simply turning on the radio to a smooth jazz station that filled the hush. Clara listened to the melody drift through the car, like a lullaby to her weary soul, her eyes misting not from fear, but from a spark of hope rekindled. Finally, the SUV pulled up before a towering building, the penthouse once belonging to Margaret. The elevator's doors parted, and Clara gasped at the unexpected luxury: gleaming hardwood floors, minimalist modern furnishings, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing a cityscape ablaze with golden lights. Not a single draft from outside disturbed the gentle warmth. Only the soft whisper of Clara's coat as she removed it interrupted the calm. Evelyn offered Clara a set of gold-plated keys in her steady hand. "This is your new home, for you and the baby. Safe, peaceful." Clara's fingers closed around the cold metal, her heart igniting with a flicker of flame. She moved to the window, laying her hand on the glass, and gazed down at the bustling streets below. Historic buildings mingled with sleek skyscrapers, their lights dancing in salute. Dawn's rosy glow painted the rooftops with a blush of promise. Clara inhaled deeply, letting the crisp morning air fill her lungs. Then whispered, "You're safe now, aren't you?" Evelyn stepped close and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did so well, my dear." A tear of joy slipped down Clara's cheek as she turned and embraced Evelyn. In that moment, she understood that every pain, every fear of the last night, had been stepping stones leading her here, to a new home, to the tranquility she craved. Even her unborn child had lent her extraordinary strength. This spacious penthouse was not only a refuge for her body, but also a sanctuary for her spirit. Here, Clara could breathe easily, watch the city awaken, and cherish each tiny heartbeat growing within her. Outside, the snow still fell, but it could not extinguish the warmth inside these walls. Clara leaned toward the window again, lips curving in quiet confidence. She would not allow her suffering to define her. From this point forward, she would walk a new path, guided by her mother's legacy of hope, love, and resilience. And in her heart, that flame would never fade. A week passed since that first snowy night, and as dawn's light crept through the penthouse window, Clara's phone buzzed with a message that made her heart still for a moment. The sender was Theodore Hawthorne, the father she had nearly forgotten over all those years. The brief line on the screen read, "My dear daughter, I would like to see you." Clara froze mid-movement, her gaze fixed on the single word "father," as if hearing it for the very first time. Memories flooded her mind, luxurious gift boxes arriving at each birthday, accompanied by formulaic letters. "Happy birthday to my beloved daughter." There had never been an embrace, never a heartfelt inquiry, only presents she never truly needed. Those opulent gifts had come to symbolize the invisible chasm between them. On one side, medals of wealth and career. On the other, a lonely heart abandoned in the trough of familial bonds long since dried up. Her mother, Margaret, had once said, "Your father does not know love, Clara. He let his work overshadow his family." And Clara had believed her mother's words. Margaret had spent her life shielding Clara from the Hawthorne world's vanity, then slipped away quietly, leaving behind a legacy and a heart forever bleeding from betrayal. Now, faced with that message, Clara hesitated. She set the weighty stone in her chest aside, placed the phone on the table, and gazed out across the cityscape, dazzling yet distant. Just then, Evelyn appeared, stepping softly into the living room. She sat beside Clara and took her hand. First, there's no rush. Second, give him a chance, if only for the child. Her voice was a warm embrace in itself. Clara exhaled and watched her fingers intertwine. But I'm afraid he'll only offer coldness again. Evelyn nodded. You have the right to set conditions. Decide how you wish to meet him. That afternoon, Clara chose a small cafe hidden beneath the linden trees in Lincoln Park. Scuffed wooden tables, soft amber lighting, and the gentle strains of jazz created an atmosphere both cozy and solemn. She sat waiting, her heart pounding. Each passerby brought a flicker of hope. An older man, hair flecked with gray, weary features softened by something tender. And Clara wondered if it might be him. Then he arrived. Theodore entered, taller and leaner than in her memories, his gaze shadowed by regret. Their first handshake was awkward, his fingers closing around hers as he looked down, voice husky. My dear, are you well? Clara nodded quietly, lips pressed tight. She responded softly. Father, why did you wish to see me? He drew in a long breath, as if gathering all his courage, then looked up, eyes brimming with remorse. I was wrong to put my career above my family. I forgot what matters most, loving and listening. I wish to make amends, and to protect you and your child. His words knotted Clara's chest. She searched his eyes for sincerity. The cafe seemed to hold its breath. Clara took a steadying inhale before replying. I don't need gifts or empty apologies. I only need you to honor your promises. You wish to provide financial support? I will accept, on the condition that I have full authority over its use. He was silent for a moment, then nodded slowly. Whatever you require, I will follow your wishes. Their conversation stretched over an hour, punctuated by heavy silences. Clara recounted that night in the snow, her solitary fears during pregnancy, and the pressure of working twice as hard to cradle her dream of peace. Theodore sat listening, tiny tears slipping down his cheeks, tears of a father awakened at last. He promised he would keep the media from dredging up the past, that he would shield her from bright lights and prying cameras. Clara, moved though she was, remained firm. You may help me, but I must walk on my own. I refuse to be treated like a commodity. After the meeting, Clara left the cafe feeling unexpectedly light, yet the tension lingered in her chest. This reconciliation was fragile, like her first tentative steps on a thinly frozen lake. She told herself to stay strong. The past might be painful, but it could no longer hold her future captive. In the weeks that followed, Theodore began to visit regularly. They walked along Lake Michigan's shore, watching the crimson sunset burn across the water. He would say nothing, only grasp her hand, a silent assurance of presence. One day he brought a small orchid, her mother's favorite, and placed it on the table beside the basket of newborn essentials. In the soft twilight, the bloom unfurled as a greeting to new life. Clara looked at the flower, then up at him, her eyes shining. Gradually, Theodore became part of Clara's daily life. He quietly tended to her health, bringing nourishing meals, scheduling prenatal checkups, calling to check on her when she was out. Once, when Clara dozed in the afternoon, he slipped in to straighten her blanket and closed the door gently behind him. His gaze was gentle, the tenderness he had withheld for so many years, now plain to see. On a crisp evening, Clara called Evelyn. I feel strange. I never thought I needed a father, but now I feel safe. Evelyn laughed softly. Healing takes time. You're doing wonderfully. When the day of her child's birth arrived, Theodore never left her side. He stood behind the glass of the delivery room, pride flooding his expression. As the doctor lifted the newborn boy, hawthorn blood coursed through the tiny nostrils, and Theodore choked back emotion. He's perfect. Thank you, Clara. She looked back at him, eyes glistening. Thank you for being here. Their fragile reconciliation had blossomed into something sweet. Clara knew she could never forget the past, but she had learned to embrace her scars and transform them into strength. At her side stood not only a newly acknowledged father, but the love and hope rekindled by hawthorn blood. Blood that symbolized more than money, but the enduring story of family and forgiveness. And in that moment, her heart was more at peace than ever, ready to embrace the next chapters of her life. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. The dawn light filtered through the penthouse curtains, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the warm air. Clara sat at her desk, her gaze fixed on the photograph of her mother, Margaret Hawthorne, her gentle smile ever present. In that quiet moment, Clara realized that her pain was not merely a personal tragedy, but a spark urging her to bring meaning to others' lives. Her heart echoed with a grand responsibility, to turn loss into hope, memory into motivation. The idea of the Margaret Hawthorne Memorial Center suddenly ignited in her mind. She envisioned a cozy haven where single mothers, like her own mother once, would find comfort and nurture their dreams. Children's laughter bouncing from the playroom, warm, compassionate eyes conversing with counselors, the soothing scent of herbal tea wafting from the lounge. Every detail echoed the compassion Margaret had taught her. Love is not given to receive, but given to spread. Fueled by this resolve, Clara rose and traversed Chicago to scout locations, meet with social organizations, and note real needs. She visited a small shelter in Englewood, where young mothers strained under financial burdens. She toured a public maternity ward, where doctors lacked resources for proper care. She sat in job placement interviews, listening to their aspirations for work and independence. Each time she met a weary face, her heart squeezed, but also strengthened, tempered by the belief that she could make a difference. With Evelyn Marshall's steadfast support, her lawyer and trusted advisor, Clara finalized the proposal and drafted the center's structure. Counseling rooms, a medical clinic, vocational training classes, and an employment referral office. The Hawthorne Trust, secretly established by her mother, now served as the primary funder. Yet Clara set clear conditions. Every expense and decision would be managed by her and the center's board. She refused to let charity become an empty reputation. She would guard her vision. On opening day, a delicate Chicago drizzle fell, beads of water tracing the windows. Yet inside the Memorial Center, the air was as warm as spring. Clara stood at the podium, spotlight illuminating her proud face. Behind her loomed a portrait of Margaret, hair in an elegant bun, eyes full of kindness. Applause erupted from single mothers, volunteers, corporate partners, and her father, Theodore, standing quietly at the back with tears in his eyes. Clara began, her voice warm but resolute. Margaret Hawthorne believed that true strength lies in compassion. Today, I dedicate this space to supporting single mothers, sharing hope and building futures. My hope is that each person who walks through these doors will find comfort, the will to persevere, and a passion for life. She paused, eyes shimmering, then smiled. My deepest thanks to the Hawthorne Trust, to Evelyn, ever my believer, and to my father, whose resources made this dream possible. But above all, I thank my mother for teaching me that the greatest love is not giving away what we have, but giving with all our heart." The applause thundered, yet Clara barely heard it. In her mind, she saw scenes of everyday life in the center, comforting a young mother with a gentle hand on her shoulder, organizing supplies with volunteers, watching a baking skills class where trembling hands learned to operate a mixer. Each smile, each grateful glance was a priceless reward, dissolving all weariness. Clara did not stop there. She decided to engage more deeply with Hawthorne Enterprises, her family's business empire. On her first day in the boardroom, she entered to an atmosphere of solemnity. Financial reports and profit charts lined the walls, and curious eyes fixed on a former barista and community college student. Clara drew in a steady breath and opened with a pointed question. Can we optimize profits without sacrificing social values? Is community responsibility a cost or an investment in a sustainable future? A hush fell. Then board members turned to each other, sparked into discussion. Hawthorne's top executives found themselves drawn into her vision. Business was not merely numbers, but a commitment to society. Clara proposed vocational training for the center's mothers, collaboration with HR for prioritized hiring, and allocating a portion of profits to a support fund. In a remarkable moment, the board not only agreed, they invited Clara to lead the initiative, embodying this new direction. That afternoon, as Clara walked down the mirrored hallway, her tailored vest framing her shoulders perfectly, she realized she had become a bridge between two worlds, profit and compassion. She was not just managing assets, she was igniting the empire's conscience to ensure wealth generated not only returns, but also genuine good. Back at the center, Clara discovered a small card on the reception desk. "Thank you for being a beacon of hope," signed by a mother whose name she didn't know. Her heart swelled. She held the card to her chest and closed her eyes. In that moment, the true glow was not in money or fame, but in the smiles and renewed confidence she had inspired. As twilight fell and streetlights flickered on, Clara stood by the window, watching the sky blush pale pink. She inhaled deeply and whispered, "Mother, we did it." In her heart, this philanthropic mission was more than duty. It was Margaret Hawthorne's living legacy. Clara smiled, knowing the path ahead remained long, but she was no longer afraid. For her heart, forged by love, now wielded the power to turn dreams into reality. The Chicago night was as bleak as a field of unspoken fears. Snowflakes fell thickly, blanketing the streets until only the soft glow of street lamps remained visible. The air cut through flesh like a blade, each gust reminding Clara that a new battle awaited her. Not against the world, but against her own fragile body. She felt each contraction radiating from her lower belly, every pang echoing like a war drum in her chest. Her heart pounded. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Her mind spun in turmoil. By prior arrangement, Theodore had hired a gleaming SUV, its engine rumbling through the silent winter night. He sat beside the driver, the flickering headlights tracing worry lines across his drawn face. Behind him, Clara fought to sit upright, clutching the seat rail, eyes squeezed shut, lips pressed hard together to contain each contraction. Whenever snow pelted the window, a fragile spark of hope flared within her. This was the critical moment, one that would define not only her fate, but that of the unborn boy she carried. At the gates of Northwestern Memorial Hospital, a team of doctors and nurses in white coats stood ready like angels in the night. The corridor lights were stark and cold, and the echo of heels on tile added urgency to the atmosphere. Clara was guided into the delivery room, where the bright surgical lights revealed every bead of sweat on her brow. All around, the steady beep of the fetal monitor sounded like a countdown to destiny. Beside her, Sophie Larson, her high school friend, waited with tear-bright eyes, gripping Clara's hand. Sophie had volunteered to be there at dawn, without a single complaint. Her face held equal parts determination and concern. Around them, nurses gently coached Clara to breathe, counting her through each wave, wiping her brow with tender whispers. Evelyn Marshall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit and carrying a neat portfolio, appeared amid the sterile whiteness, ready to handle every legal form, every insurance detail, so Clara could focus on giving birth. The contractions intensified. Sweat soaked through Clara's blouse, each drop tracing down onto the blanket. She gritted her teeth, focusing on Sophie's steady voice. "You can do this, Clara. Everything will be okay. Everything will be okay." Sophie's tone was both a lullaby and a lighthouse guiding her through the storm. Clara opened her eyes, seeing Sophie's faith-ignited gaze, then turned to Evelyn and nodded her thanks. Evelyn squeezed her hand gently, conveying, "You are not alone." The doctor entered, the reflective brim of his cap casting a serious shadow over his face. He checked a few readings, then spoke softly. "We're entering the final stage. Samuel will arrive soon." The name floated in the hushed room, a gift promised by her mother, and Clara felt warmth spread through her. Painful, yes, but knowing she was fulfilling a sacred purpose. 14 hours of agony stretched before her like centuries. The pain came in waves, interspersed with moments of quiet reprieve. Clara's head felt like it would burst, yet when Sophie placed a spoonful of saline solution to her lips, Clara leaned on it to keep fighting. Evelyn sat quietly by the door, her eyes tracking every movement. Theodore stood outside the closed door, hands gripping the elevator rail, beads of cold sweat falling onto the spotless floor. He prayed in silence, murmuring, "Be strong, my dear. Your mother is watching." Then the moment arrived. A small but insistent cry, breaking the tension like a blade. Clara, exhausted and elated, felt her heart shatter and reassemble in joy. The doctor placed the newborn against her chest, warm, with the tender scent of new life. His rosy cheeks and parted lips seemed astonished by the vast world. Samuel, 6 pounds, 9 ounces, entered the world like a miracle. His cry, tiny yet unstoppable, banished the darkness of the night. Clara held Samuel close, tears streaming as she smiled through her exhaustion. "Welcome, Samuel, a gift from God." The name her mother chose, a soft promise of new beginnings. In that instant, the shattered wounds Julian had inflicted in the snowy night felt distant. She was no longer the abandoned wife. She was a courageous mother, ready to fight and sacrifice for her child's future. Theodore was allowed into the delivery room, his face shining with pride and regret. He bent over to kiss his astonished grandson's forehead, then met Clara's gaze. "I am so proud of you." Clara returned his look with a weary but radiant smile. "Thank you for being here." Evelyn and Sophie stood by, their tears mingling with joy. In that moment, all past grievances fell silent. Only the warm glow of the lights, the steady beep of the monitor, and Samuel's soft breathing in his mother's arms remained. Looking at her little angel's face, Clara felt a surge of energy, the power of maternal love, the power of hope's flame kindled through all her trials. That night, as snow continued to drift outside, Clara's heart was no longer cold. She envisioned the future. Peaceful mornings with her son, laughter echoing through their new home, confident steps along the charitable path her mother had dreamed. And in the final quiet before sleep claimed her, Clara whispered, "You are here, and together we will write another story. A story of hope, of love, and of boundless strength." The crystal chandeliers of the Palmer House ballroom glittered like 1,000 stars. The soft red carpet undulated beneath every footstep. The gala music mingled with the clink of wine glasses, composing a symphony for refined ears. Guests, resplendent in evening gowns and tuxedos, marveled at the opulent decor. Amid all this splendor, Clara Bennett appeared like a solitary bloom in frost, her navy gown hugging her figure, a modest neckline preserving elegance, her hair swept into a neat chignon, revealing delicate features, her eyes as cold as ice yet burning with fierce determination. The opening night of the Margaret Hawthorne Memorial Center was the dream she and her late mother had nurtured. Behind the podium, a portrait of Margaret was bathed in ethereal golden light, majestic as a protective goddess. Clara ascended with her heart racing. Warm and heartfelt applause greeted her. She smiled, bowed to the audience, then slowly lifted her gaze to meet theirs. Everything proceeded smoothly, until a familiar silhouette appeared at the windowed entrance. Julian Carter, her ex-husband, the man who had abandoned her in a snowstorm, stepped into the ballroom, looking utterly out of place. His suit was rumpled, his tie askew, and his hair tousled as though he had fought the storm outside. Desperation, shame, and anger flickered in his eyes. Rumors of the Hawthorne fortune had reached him. He believed that as Samuel's biological father, he was entitled to a share of the inheritance and, above all, to his son. Julian forced his way through the crowd. People parted for him as if he were a corpse being carried. Every eye fixed on him, the uninvited intruder. He searched for Clara, then stopped a mere step away. The music hushed, the clink of glasses stilled. The entire room held its breath. Julian's voice was hoarse. "Clara, this is the opening gala for the memorial center built by my mother, yet I had no invitation. I am Samuel's father. Why have you hidden the money and our son from me?" Fury flashed in his eyes as his trembling hand reached out, threatening to tear apart the scene before him. Clara's heart thundered, yet she maintained an air of calm dignity. She inhaled deeply, pressed her lips together. The orchestra's violins fell silent. Nobody dared look away from the two of them. Hundreds of stares and flashing cameras transformed the private confrontation into a public performance. Clara replied softly, but each word rang out clearly. "Julian, you were not invited here. You have no right to speak at the ceremony honoring my mother's memory. She judged you not by empty promises, but by your actions." She paused and swept her eyes across the room. Guests leaned in. "That night," she continued, her tone unwavering but powerful, "when Chicago was buried in snow, you shoved me onto the icy street and called me a burden. You threw my suitcase, threw away our future, and slammed the door on the home you once vowed would be our sanctuary." Each word struck the hushed room like a hammer blow. Julian took a step back, bewildered, lips quivering, unable to form a response. Clara inclined her head, her gaze unforgiving. "You may be the father in name, but you are not the father in deed. Samuel, our son, needs love, not shameless demands. My mother left this center for those in need, not for those who only know how to demand." Silence reigned. Then applause erupted in thunderous waves. Clara's most beautiful creation was not the center itself, but the image of a woman standing tall, protecting her child and her mother's legacy. In that instant, Julian was the loneliest soul in the room, an ant lost among golden legions. Honor or entitlement? He knew he had been wrong. Security swiftly intervened, guiding Julian aside with firm but gentle hands. Press cameras tracked him as he was escorted out, his vacant eyes bewildered by the unfolding scene. Clara's words lingered long after he had gone, like waves erasing doubt across every hidden shore. Clara bowed her head in thanks to the audience, her eyes shining with conviction. "Thank you for celebrating with us and supporting our mission. The Margaret Hawthorne Memorial Center will always be a place of hope and compassion." Applause rang again. Never had it sounded so heartfelt. Her heart pounded, not from anxiety, but from an unlikely joy. She had prevailed, not with weapons, but with truth and courage. She and Samuel would no longer fear the ghosts of the past. Julian held no place in their story any longer. Bathed in the gala's glow, Clara descended the stage, taking Theodore's and Evelyn's hands, those who had stood by her without hesitation. They exchanged nods, eyes meeting with a shared spark of hope. Then Clara turned back to the dance floor, imagining children's laughter soon to fill that space. Tomorrow, the center's doors would open to single mothers welcomed into open arms. Here, there would be no demands for entitlement, only genuine love and sharing. In the final moments before the gala's end, Clara glanced at an orphaned child playing in the corner, her lips curving into a smile. Compassion and maternal devotion had triumphed over all pain. She had defended the center and, more importantly, affirmed faith in love and justice. As she stepped back into the clear Chicago night, where the snow had ceased and the sky reflected like a mirror, Clara knew the road ahead might be challenging, but she would never walk it alone. The pale dawn light streamed through the courtroom window, gently illuminating the dust motes dancing over the lawyer's stacked paperwork. Outside, Chicago had awakened to the blare of car horns and the clang of elevated trains, but inside, only the steady thud of the judge's gavel echoed off the wood. Clara stood tall before the bench. Samuel nestled against her, his eyes wide with curiosity, yet comforted in his mother's arms. Her hair, pulled into a high bun, was slightly tousled after months of racing against time and responsibility, yet her determination remained unshaken. Opposite her sat Julian Carter, his face drawn and pale. His eyes roamed the courtroom, seeking a trace of sympathy, but finding only the judge's stern regard. The neglected custody files, the brutal evidence of the night he abandoned her in the snow, all had been laid bare and entered into the record. Julian sprang to his feet, gloves clutching a sheaf of papers. "I am only asking for some parenting rights. I am the biological father." His voice rang out, heavy with disappointment. The judge struck the gavel one final time. "Based on these records, this court finds that you have failed in your parental duties, exhibited violence toward the child's mother, and caused both physical and emotional harm. Full custody is awarded to Ms. Bennett." The gavel's sharp rap sounded like victory's drumbeat. Julian fell silent, his shoulders heavy with the weight of irrevocable guilt. Clara drew a trembling breath. A surge of joy threatened her tears, but she steadied herself. When the judge invited her to reclaim Samuel, she lowered her head in solemn gratitude. As she left the courtroom, Samuel wrapped his little arms around her neck, gazing up in wonder. "Mama." His soft coo sounded like a bell in her heart. Clara smiled, tears glistening. "We won, my son." Outside, the golden sunlight bathed the cobblestone walkway. Clara paused with Samuel's stroller, looking up at the clear blue sky. Through the glass doors, she could see Julian watching, his proud gaze replaced by remorse. He turned away, quietly swallowed by a sea of expensive suits and camera lenses. He would soon be forgotten, remembered only for his failure and betrayal. Months later, the Margaret Hawthorne Memorial Center had grown to 3 branches across Chicago. The pastel-hued walls of the counseling rooms bore hand-painted words of encouragement. "Strength is not never crying, it is knowing how to wipe away tears, then stand tall." Weary single mothers, with calloused hands and heavy eyes, now found sanctuary here. A place to share pain, develop skills, and begin anew. Each day, Clara visited, offering volunteers words of comfort and a smile. Tomorrow will shine brighter than today. Meanwhile, at Hawthorne Enterprises headquarters, Clara had become a respected board member. Her philanthropic initiatives, a scholarship program for single mothers' children, a fund for affordable housing, and partnerships with community colleges, earned unanimous approval. In one board meeting, she presented charts showing steady profits alongside expanding social projects. The applause that followed was proof that business and social responsibility need not be at odds. Clara's bond with her father, Theodore Hawthorne, deepened like never before. On weekend afternoons, he drove her and Samuel to the park by Lake Michigan, Her rosy-cheeked son toddled across the green lawn, eagerly chasing pigeons. Theodore sat on a bench, watching the pair with a proud smile that etched crow's feet at his eyes. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. Clara placed her hand on his shoulder, her gratitude shining. "I love you too, Dad." Samuel grew with astonishing speed. One spring morning, he took his first wobbly steps on the penthouse living room floor, babbling "ba ba ba" like a cheerful melody. Clara knelt ready to catch him. When he stumbled and cried, he erupted into giggles at her soothing coos. Theodore and Evelyn watched from the doorway, beaming with pride. In that moment, the ashes of past sorrows fell away, leaving only the fine sand of hope and love. And Julian? He had vanished from public life. The media's clamor faded as the community's focus shifted to Clara's center and its charitable programs. The name Julian Carter, once illustrious, remained only as a footnote of failure and cruelty. On a quiet weekend night, Clara stood by the penthouse window, Samuel sleeping peacefully in her arms. Outside, Lake Michigan shimmered with city lights, rippling under the moon. She pressed her son's small face to her chest and whispered, "We did it, my son." His gentle breath against her warmed her smile. From the ashes of her pain, she had built a brilliant future, not with revenge, but with love, resilience, and an unwavering will. Clara Bennett's story stands as living proof that, even when life casts you into darkness, you carry within you the light to rise. Pain is not the end, but the bedrock of inner strength. If Clara's journey touches your heart, share this message. Somewhere out there, someone may need to hear it. Remember, you are stronger than you believe, and one day, you will look back with pride and say, "I did it." And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe.